Hello, I'm Mary Ito, and welcome to the Cram Podcast. Well, we love our animals. Maybe you're a dog lover and you always have been. They're part of the family. Or maybe cats do it for you. You like to snuggle up to Leo and spend a lazy afternoon with him by your side. But one thing is true. Whether it's a dog, a cat, a bird, a snake, or a gorilla, they are not us. They have their own language and their own behaviors, which sometimes confounds us, and it has us scratching our heads. Suzanne MacDonald has long been fascinated by animals and studies their behavior to gain more insight into how their worlds work. She's a psychologist who studies animal behavior, and that is a rare breed, I'm told. And she's in the Department of Psychology at York University. And she joins us. Good afternoon and welcome, Suzanne.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming on. Now, it's interesting because I've gone back and I've seen you interviewed a number of times, and you've said that you feel you like animals better than humans. Why would that be?
Well, you probably caught me on a bad day, but I mean, we are animals as well. Humans are animals. So I just think of the continuum of other species, perhaps we aren't the most interesting out there, although some individuals certainly are. I think if I had to pick a random gorilla versus a random human, I might pick the gorilla. But again, you might have caught me on a day where I'm feeling particularly that way.
Well, I mean, you've studied all kinds of animals, but I wanted to start off with two that I guess would be considered our best friends, dogs and cats. First of all, I mean, why do you think that there is this big divide, this split between dog lovers and cat lovers?
I don't know if there is a divide between dog lovers and cat lovers. There's a lot of us who love dogs and cats, and we choose cats because we travel a lot, or we choose dogs because we want more exercise or whatever. So I think there's a lot of people who love both. I know there are some people who don't like cats. Those are generally people who've never had a cat, because as soon as they do, they tend to like the cats. I really don't know if there is a divide, but I do think, dog lovers like animals that are always at their side and that they can train to do things for them. I mean, dogs are amazing. They co-evolved with us. They share our evolutionary history. They're part of us. They're part of our pack, and we love them for that. Cats are not that.
Not at all. I know.
Huge cat lover, so I love them because of that. So I think most of us who really, really love cats love the fact that they are independent. They love us, obviously, but they don't really need us, and I think that's why we like them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I love dogs too, but it so happens I have two cats right now. And so why is that? Both dogs and cats have been domesticated, right? Over many, many, many years. Dogs, I mean, I'm not an expert, but dogs seem more willing to be trained than cats do. Why is that? Why are cats their own kind of animal?
Well, domestication doesn't mean that the same thing as coevolution. So dogs evolved with us. So they evolved into a different species. They were wolves. They evolved into a different species that works with us, that understands our cues, that we understand their cues. They are part of the family, really, the evolution of the family. Cats didn't evolve with us. They evolved, but not to be a different species. They're all still cats. So all domestic cats and lions and all the other cats except for cheetahs are actually all pretty much the same cat. So dogs, we have shaped dogs and they have shaped us. Mostly we have shaped dogs, but we haven't actually shaped cats. If you think about it, all cats are about the same size, and all cats, they have different color morphs, but they're all the same behavior. Whereas dogs, we have completely and wildly changed them from a Chihuahua to a Great Dane to everything in between. We're responsible for the evolution of dogs, and we're not responsible for that.
Right. That's so interesting, because I was thinking about, there's no such thing as like a guard cat.
No.
You right? I mean, I don't think you can train a cat to guard your house or to protect you. Can you?
Well, I mean, you can train a cat to do all sorts of things, and I think they probably would try. might certainly alert me when there's something outside, but then they expect me to deal with it. So I don't think that they're going to go out there and deal with it. So, we've bred dogs for a purpose. That's what we do. We make guard dogs. We make dogs that run along fire engines, Dalmatians. We make dogs that go up in the Alps and save people. We make dogs that do all the things. And we can make foxes that do that too. So there's evidence that foxes can be domesticated. Any canines like that can be domesticated pretty quickly in evolutionary terms. And because they're pack animals, they want to serve the pack leaders, whereas cats are not pack animals and they don't want to serve the pack leader, which is kind of why I like them. In fact,
so does that mean then that fundamentally cats have no real loyalty to us, or do they?
Oh, I don't think so. I think certainly if you have cats, and I mean, my cats are unbelievably loyal to me. They think I'm their mother. I think yours probably think you're their mother too. So they bring us things from the garden. They bring us toys. They bring us things. They rely on us for food. So they're very, very loyal to us, but they're not, I think people think dogs are more loyal than they are.
They do. Yeah, people do.
Lots of evidence that, in the famous study where somebody pretended to fall down and have a heart attack and the dogs just sort of wander away, right? It's like, oh, well, I guess you're not alive anymore. I'll go find someone else who is. So I really think we overestimate dogs' loyalty. Obviously, they stick with us. They rely on us as well. They just show it in a different way than cats do.
So what human traits do they have? Because I hear people say all the time that, oh, my dog is so sad today. And, and I've seen a dog, at least I thought this dog looked really sad, a friend of mine. And I could swear I thought I saw tears well up in his eyes, but maybe I was imagining that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I do think that animals feel, other animals, again, we're animals. I think animals feel emotions, but I do think that humans train those facial expressions and that behavior. That when dogs look guilty, they have that look.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, they don't get punished as much. So, of course, that's why they do it. So you can pretty much train anything. So I can train a pigeon to pretty much do all the things too. They just don't have facial expressions like dogs do. But you can that's been shown since the 40s when B.F. Skinner was showing how
the Skinner box.
Yeah,
the Skinner box.
Reward and punishment is a really powerful thing. So, and it works for humans too. So what do little kids do? Of course, little kids learn. If you go, I'm sorry, mommy, then mommy doesn't get so mad. That's the beauty of learning. So we all have that in common, that we can learn from rewards and punishments. But
you said though animals do have emotions.
Right? I don't know for sure, but I certainly think that would be silly if we were the only animal that didn't, given that we share evolutionary history with all the others. I'm not sure what emotions a fish feels, because it's very difficult to think about being inside the mind of a fish, but it's pretty easy to think about being in the mind of a chimpanzee or an orangutan. So I have to infer that when they exhibit the same behaviors that we do, that they're experiencing the same emotions that we do. But again, we're never going to know because we can't ask them. Yeah.
So do you do think chimpanzees might feel sadness or happiness?
I know
for sure. Oh, they do. Oh, do they? Okay.
I'm not sure about fish, but I know that chimpanzees do. That's for sure. Absolutely.
What have you seen? Like what would
all the great apes. We are a great ape, so humans try to keep ourselves separate, but we're really great apes. So this is these are our close cousins. Of course, they would experience the same emotions we do. They have all the same physiological responses that we do. Their gestation period's the same. They can use human birth control. All the things. They are the same. So there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that they experience the same kinds of emotions that we do. I don't think they label them like humans do, because no animal has that kind of ability, that language ability. I don't know if we even know what human emotions are. There are some people who think we only have a few, and we just happen to label them all differently. So, the jury is out on that too. Everything we think we got figured out in humans, we don't have that figured out. And we definitely don't have that figured out in other species. If we can't even figure out our own species, there's no way we can do that. Yeah.
So if great apes have the emotions that we do, the further animals move away from humans, is it harder to tell if they have similar emotions to us?
Well, primates.
Like the further out we go, like a fish and an insect, you know what I mean?
Obviously.
Like that.
I mean, obviously. The thing about it is you look at the brains, right? So what brains are similar, what parts of the brains are similar. Doesn't mean that we have to have the same kinds of brains to experience the same kinds of things, but, it helps. So why not start there? But, great apes and other primates, so monkeys, for example, use facial expressions. We're primates, so humans are primates. And the thing that primates do is most of them, almost all of them, live in social groups. And when you live in a social group, you're close with other individuals of your species. And so most primates living in social groups use facial expressions to communicate. So you don't have to speak. You can use facial expressions or nonverbal gestures. And we all know that happens in humans too. We may not be aware of it, but the nonverbal cues speak volumes, as we all know. And that's the case in our close relatives. So when you see those nonverbal cues, you see those facial expressions, and they are combined with other behaviors, you go, all right, you can kind of infer what's going on there. So if one of them, they don't use this, smiling is not the same in chimpanzees, for example. So chimps aren't smiling because they're happy, they're smiling because they're afraid. And when you see that, you know what this animal is communicating to another individual. So lots and lots of people have been studying animal communication for a very long time and figured out what the repertoire of communication means in other species. And certainly in our close relatives, they're the best studied. But, when we talk about a fish, you don't have much to go on in terms of facial responses because they don't make any. They gape when they're
they gape. Yeah. What about those eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. But they don't have the same. We have a lot of muscles in our face designed to give facial expressions, and so do our other primate cousins. So I think that tells you that they're communicating that way, and they're communicating with others of their species.
Yeah.
So that's a different thing than a bug or whatever that is not communicating that way.
I was so interested. You spoke about early on in your career, you had worked at a couple of zoos. You worked in Vancouver. You worked at the Toronto Zoo, and you talked about how you were concerned about the condition of the animals, and you found that some of them were in a kind of a sad state. The primates. What would have caused you to think that the animals were sad?
Well, one of the things we look at is activity levels. So when you are comparing an animal under human care or in captivity to the same species in the wild, you look at activity levels or a behavioral profile to compare, okay, what does the animal in the wild do throughout the day? And what does the animal in captivity do throughout the day? If the animal in captivity throughout the day just sits there all day long and then sleeps all night, then they're not doing what the animals in the wild do. I think I was talking about the animals at the former Stanley Park Zoo, which it was dissolved and it's no longer there. And the folks there were fantastic. It's just that it was a small zoo and the primates were sad. All I can say. They were sad. They didn't move around very much. They didn't have much room to move around in. Two of the species that I work with, one would bite the fingers off the other one. So they had missing fingers, not great. You also look for behavior called stereotypical behavior. So you're looking for, in humans, it's things like biting your nails or, have you ever met anybody who sucks their hair?
Yes. Or even pulls their hair.
Pull
hair
it
out. Yeah.
Any of that trichotillomania thing, any of those kinds of anxiety-related behaviors. Other species exhibit them as well, and primates do similar things. And so they'll scab, pick, and we're all primates. We all do the same kind of thing. It's all directed on ourselves. Chimpanzees and orangutans do what we call rough scratching when they're nervous, and they do this thing. We do it too, kind of like you kind of rake your nails up the side of your body. Sometimes people will do it on their arms, but other orangs in particular will do it up the side, so will chimps. So they're telling you that they're anxious. And so when you see those kinds of behaviors in a polar bear, for example, you'll see pacing or swimming in a repetitive pattern. You'll see tigers or big cats of any kind pacing back and forth, back and forth. This isn't walking. This is head down, just going back and forth, digging a groove in the ground. And that is what used to be pretty common at zoos, would be animals doing that. And we think that was because they were not able to exhibit their species' typical behaviors, and they were anxious, they were bored, and when we give them things to do, they stop doing those things. So that's the other thing, is you always have to test to see, okay, well, if this is the case, we give them something to break that, will they change the behavior? And they do. So
they do. Okay.
Same as humans. On humans, we use medication, right? And the same medications will help primates stop doing that. So you can tell that the parts of the brain are similar because the same medications work.
Like an antidepressant.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're saying you give them things to do and then their behavior changes. Is it possible for animals to be happy in a zoo?
I think so, for sure.
Yeah.
Modern zoos, I'm talking about zoos from 30 years ago, and they were trying, but there wasn't much science out there. There wasn't much, it was all veterinary, like here's how to keep an animal alive, basically. But now, since then, there's been tons and tons of work looking at, here's not how to keep an animal alive, but here's how to keep an animal healthy and happy. And, these animals are under our care. Some of them are almost extinct in the wild. They're going to be under our care forever, unless we can figure out how to put them back in the wild, which is very difficult. So we owe them that, we owe them better lives than they have had in the past. And certainly modern zoos do that really, really well. At the Toronto Zoo, where I have done most of my work, there's a whole team of animal welfare folks, and they're all, my students are doing that too. And they're all out there watching every animal, recording every day to find out how they are. How can we improve them? We're just doing a study now. One of my students and I are working with a facility that has turtles in it, because turtles are really, really hard to figure out too, because they don't have very many facial expressions. But to try to figure out, okay, what is a happy turtle, and how do we ensure that turtles that are under human care are happy? Like, we can't people just put them in a box and assume, all's fine.
Right.
But in fact, not at all. So, it's really challenging, which is why I really like this work, because it's really hard and it keeps you up at night. And when you figure something out, then the animal is in their behavior improves, and that makes me happy.
And it probably takes a lot of time.
It does.
I would imagine, right?
You need a lot of data, right? You can't just all right, here's what I think. No, you need to have months and months and months of data. And with some studies I've done are like years and years of data, just to be able to have a comparison. You can't just do something and say, everything's fine. You have to have a control, and then you have to change something, and then you have to go back to the control. And, the designs take a really long time, and you only have, unlike humans where you can have hundreds of people in a study, you only got 5 gorillas. So, you gotta do it for a much longer time because you have fewer individuals.
Right. Okay. So let me take a guess based on what you said. Would a happy turtle be a turtle that basically follows its natural pattern of behavior as if it was like in the wild?
That's what I think. Yeah.
Oh, is that okay? See, I learned something already from what you said.
Well, and we're also thinking like, okay, many of these animals, we don't know what they do in the wild. There's no data on them. They're almost extinct in the wild. And so we're just kind of figuring out, okay, well, let's put them in different situations and see which one seems to be happier. Like we don't know. It's a crapshoot. Everyone, people think, it's a small planet. We have everything figured out. We have nothing figured out. We don't know how humans work. We don't know how animals, we know nothing. We're pathetic. Honestly, we're all just trying, we got rats figured out pretty well. But everything else, I don't know. We don't know much. So, turtle in particular, every species is different. Okay, this one lives in Vietnam. This one lives in South Carolina. Like, how am I supposed to know? We have to figure out, okay, where do they come from? What do they do? Where did they evolve? What would they eat? How can we monitor that? you have to look at each species as an unique and unique organism. You can't. I think people are like, all turtles are the same. Oh no, they're not. Or all monkeys are the same. Oh no, absolutely not. So, it's there again about 2 million species. So it's not like I'm going to be out of work anytime soon.
Yeah. So this is boggling to me. It really is, because I mean, if we don't even understand, well, let's not even talk about humans, but if we don't understand animals and animals are in trouble, let's say something happens, they're endangered, whatever. If we don't even really understand them, how do you save them? How do you make them happy? That's whoa.
It's a big job, but
yeah,
it's a team thing. So veterinarians are on there making sure that they're physically, and again, think about veterinarians. Most medical doctors know one species, humans, and veterinarians have to know all of them. So the veterinarians who work at zoos have to go, all right, today it's a snake, tomorrow it's a tiger, today and next day it's an elephant. These are amazing people, and they have to know all the things, and that is a daunting task. That's why there's not very many zoo veterinarians, actually, because it's a really hard task. So I think we're all in it together, and we're trying to. The biologist part of me is trying to look at ecosystems. Okay, what does the ecosystem like? What's missing from it? What's been changed? Where's the water? What are these? Are these animals able to breed with other members of their species? Are they stuck? Are they in an isolated area? You have to think about the environment that they're in, and then the individuals themselves. But as a psychologist, think of individuals, and biologists think of populations generally. So biologists don't care about one raccoon that got hit by a car, because there's hundreds of thousands of them. But psychologists are like, oh, how can we train raccoons not to get hit by cars? So we come at it with different perspectives, and I have both those perspectives in my brain, so it's kind of a natural place.
Right, biology and psychology. Yeah. And I remember too, you've studied orangutans. Do you feel you got a little bit of a handle on their behavior?
You bet. Yep. No, I think orangutans for sure. They're fantastic. They're fantastic. I can't say it enough about orangutans, how amazing they are. I like gorillas too, but orangutans are just so fun and hilarious, and they have a really good sense of humor, and they are. I just think they're awesome. Maybe because they're redheads, I don't know. But also, they're really fun to work with. They're very.
Give me an example.
Well, I was thinking about gorillas. So I tried to use a touchscreen computer with gorillas many years ago because of Coco, the gorilla. You may have heard of that. Yeah. So Coco had her Francine Patterson worked with Coco, and she had a computer. So I talked to Francine and said, okay, what computer do you have? I want to try this with the gorillas at the zoo to give them something to do. So I got this computer made with a bulletproof screen, because they have a lot of power. And I was like, okay, Charles, our gorilla at the zoo, silverback.
Oh, Charles the silverback.
Yeah.
He's famous.
His hand, right? Yeah. So I had to take the screen and get it bulletproof, which again, try to explain that to somebody. But anyway, I had it bulletproofed, and I brought it in and I set it up, and Charles was terrified. He was just terrified of it. I had to have the computer start saying my voice because it would calm him down. He was terrified. The gorillas don't look at screens. They look sideways at things. And so it just was a resounding failure. One of the gorillas pulled all the wires off the back of the computer and started whipping them around. And it was just absolutely, it didn't work at all. So I thought, okay, well, maybe we will not do this, and we'll try the orangutans instead. Oh my God, like a night and day. So orangutans sit down, and they're like, interesting. And you show them things, they're like, show me more.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they're great. So we have like 20 years of data from orangutans using touchscreens. But I have to say, they don't actually touch the screen. They are touch screens, but one of the orangutans at the time saw a picture of an adult male orangutan and got really freaked out by it. And he backed up and he went and he in his holding area, and he got a stick, and he came and he touched the screen with a stick, And then all the other orangutans are like, oh, I want a stick too. So we had to get sticks for everybody. So they touch the screen with the stick. They won't use their hands. Why? Oh my God, it's so incredibly frustrating. Anyway, that's what they do. So fascinating that they all pick that up, and fascinating that that's what they all do is sit with their sticks, and they'll pick the stick that they like, and they
Oh my goodness.
And then they touch the screen with their stick. I don't understand it either, but that's orangutans. They think of things differently than we do. That's what makes them super interesting to me.
So, you know what I find surprising? When you said you had a picture of an adult male, right? He didn't go violent. It's not like he put his fist through.
Oh, no, because he was a young male. He was terrified of it. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And Charles would have as well. The gorilla would have as well. Charles was a big chicken, actually. But obviously the orangutan was like, oh my God, there's a big male. I don't know what to do. And you could see he was like, oh no. And just went to the bed. But he knew if he touched the screen, he'd get a snack. So he had to touch the screen to get his snack. So he did that. But then it was amazing how quickly the rest of them, because they're all watching while he did it. He was in his own room, but they're all watching like this, you know. And right away they're like, well, I'm not doing it without a stick either. So you know, that's a pretty extraordinary thing to be witness to somebody thinking that through that way, and to see.
Did you videotape this? Did you videotape it?
No.
Oh no! This would be so fascinating to watch.
Fascinating, but you know, we have the evidence now because they all use sticks. Even the ones who weren't even born then, they all use sticks. It's just the cultural thing that spread to them. So during the pandemic, we haven't been able to do the computer touchscreen, but we're hoping to get that up and running again. And my grad student who's going to do it has never done that before, and I'm going to see if he can get them to touch the screen without the sticks and not tell them that, oh, we have to use sticks. Because maybe they've forgotten that they all like to use sticks, and maybe they'll actually use the touch screen, which is what it was for, because it's very frustrating to find a touch screen that works with a stick. With
a stick, right. Yeah. So, but can they learn? Can these orangutans learn and progress and go?
Absolutely.
Okay, but it doesn't seem with a touch screen they're progressing
to
the finger.
They don't like the touching. And the zoo staff had iPads for them as well. And, you know, they don't really get the touching of that either. It's not their thing. They don't want to touch the thing. And I don't know why, but that's the way. But maybe this next time around they'll use the touchscreen. I have very little hope for this, but I'm going to try to be optimistic that they won't use the sticks, that they'll use the screen. But it's a fascinating.
This is what keeps you up at night.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you say you have 20 years of data?
Oh, yes, at least. Yep.
On these orangutans?
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah, it's all published. Yeah.
So, and then, like, what about language? What about communication with humans?
Well, language is a very specific thing. So when you say language, you have to be very clear about what you mean by language. So when we talk about animal language, we usually mean communication. Our language, as you know, has grammar and syntax and has very specific rules for how things are done, and many, many words that refer to objects and also to abstract things. No other species has language like that. All species communicate in some way, but they don't have what we consider to be language. And I would argue that we kind of make it so that we define it so that we're the only ones that have language. But, there's been lots of experiments trying to teach dolphins and chimps and other species around to use language like phrases. And they can do that for sure. But I've met a lot of the language trained animals, and they are not generating language. Even the smallest child will generate language, generate their own words. This isn't what you see in non-humans, but that's because it's a human language. So it's been, incredibly important for our evolution as a species to have language. And other species don't have that in their brain, and they don't have the need for that. So communication is what we talk about when we talk about non-human animals. And almost every species communicates. So orangutans communicate. Orangutans are semi-solitary. Orangutans are mostly alone in the forest. They're giant and the forest they live in can't support a large group of orangutans, so they live in a semi-solitary existence, although they get along quite well in captivity. It's not that they don't like each other, it's just that that's the way they have to live in order to make a living where they come from. And, they have a repertoire of sounds that they make, long calls because they have to go through the forest. So if you think about the ecology of the animal, for example, gorillas live in a social group. They don't have to make huge noises. They actually grunt to communicate to each other, and they have different sounds. They'll communicate playfulness and all sorts of things through those sounds. And they also use nonverbal communication. So they're our relatives. So they use the same kinds of nonverbal communication we do, which is why it's so easy to anthropomorphize great apes, because you see them do things like shrug their shoulders, do all the things that we do, and means pretty much the same when they do it too. So they may not have language like we do, but they have a great way of communicating. And when you study them long enough, you absolutely can, any zookeeper will tell you that they can absolutely read what the animals are saying. And I'm sure the animals can read what the zookeepers are saying too.
You did an interesting experiment with apes and music. Tell us what you found.
Yeah, it was orangutans, actually. It was one of my students, Sarah, for her master's thesis. We thought, this will be fun. Because at the zoo, typically there's a radio on. In most zoos, they put a radio or some kind of music on in the off-exhibit area because it's better than clanging doors and all the other noises. So it's, people assume that the animals like it. So we thought we'd find out what genre the music the orangutans like the best. That was as simple as that. I'm like, maybe they like rock, Sarah, let's try this. But maybe they like classical. Why don't? And then we can tell the zoo, like, look, they like classical music, so play that. So we set it up where we had all the genres from Apple Music and the top 10 songs from each one.
Oh, did you have disco?
We did. We had everything. Yes.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And set it up so that the orangutans could choose. So we had silence versus a little song clip, and they could choose whichever ones they wanted to listen to. And what they ended up doing was turning the music off all the time. So they just didn't like any of them. 0 of them. So that was surprising to us. I mean, I would have assumed they would have found something they like, but no, significantly, they would just decide, no, I'd prefer just to sit. Thank you very much. I don't need any of this music, which was something that I didn't expect. So we thought, okay. Yeah. I thought, well, maybe we could get them to produce music. Maybe it's not the sound, and maybe it's not just the listening. Maybe they want to produce the music because you've seen videos of like otters playing keyboards and stuff like that. So we thought we'd let them try that. This wasn't published. That didn't work at all. They didn't like that at all. So, I thought I was having all these brilliant ideas. It's like, let's do this instead. Let's try this. No, none of them were brilliant ideas with orangutans. They just didn't. Now, not to say all orangutans are the same, but they are a pretty silent species. And so if you give them a chance, I think they turn the radio off. So that's what they did for us anyway.
Oh, that's so interesting. You mentioned earlier about raccoons, and you studied them as well. Mm-hmm. And people in cities have a very curious relationship with raccoons, because I think, many of us love them, but then we also hate them because they get into our trash cans. Did we actually end up, I know there were, I don't know if this was your experiment. Did it involve trash cans? It did, didn't it? Yeah. What happened with that?
Yeah. So, first of all, I have to say it's not all cities. So, in the West, I'm from Western Canada, raccoons are not an issue like that.
Yeah.
They're an issue in Toronto and Chicago, and that's where their big issue is, especially Toronto. But we have adopted them as our unofficial mascot.
Yes, we have.
They are.
And so has an airline.
Yes. Yes. Which is really cute, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, there are more raccoons in Toronto than there really should be, but there are so many raccoons. So I've done quite a bit, and I continue to looking to see if we as humans are making raccoons, inadvertently making raccoons much smarter by constantly upping the ante on how hard it is to get in our garbage cans, trash cans, whatever you want to call it. And probably we are kind of creating the perfect urban warrior by doing this, making it difficult for the raccoons, and they have to get smarter to figure that out, how to survive. But the city of Toronto wanted to replace their green bins, excuse me, I got the hiccups, organic waste bins. And because the previous ones had no lids, they had lids, but they had no latches. And so they were at the end of their lives and they wanted to replace them. So they asked if I would test some of the prototypes in my backyard, and all the prototypes worked great. It's just one of them was easier for humans. The rest couldn't be actually opened very easily by humans. So they replaced the green bins, and raccoons in general have not figured them out. There's a few that, I don't know if they can say figured them out, but they learned how to break into them by breaking the bins, which is the raccoon way of figuring things out. People, I think raccoons are sitting there and pondering and thinking, how do I get into no, they're just brute force little beasts that will knock anything over, and just their first inclination is always to destroy and any way possible. And that's what they do. And it works really well for them. So, but in general, the raccoon resistant bins are working quite well.
Are working so far. Yeah, we do have one, and so far it's been good. But it's interesting you say a couple of them did get in by breaking
they knock
through.
It over and break off the latch. But the way the bin was designed is to make it it's physically impossible for a raccoon to get into that bin if they try to open it the way that humans open it. So that's the thing. But they don't try to get into the bin the way that humans open it. They try to get into the bin the way
a raccoon would open.
Yeah. And, if a rat has gnawed, rats also unbelievably smart, way smarter than raccoons. But if a rat has gnawed, a little hole open in a bin, the raccoons can just use their hands and get in there.
Right.
Have the ability to grasp, right? So they can get into anything. But, probably it's the rat that's the mastermind that's figured out how to do that. If you put them together, they can.
No, don't even say that. Yeah. Don't. Yeah.
I can see rats like riding raccoons and using them for their bidding. It would be amazing. But raccoons they're not the evil geniuses that people think they are, but they definitely are persistent, and they will work on a problem for a reason.
Yeah. And from the sounds of it, getting smarter all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I also noticed that you study llamas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I that kind of piqued my interest in a way, because it's so funny. You know how animals, we kind of go through these trends where they pop up, and like an iguana, and then you're seeing it on commercials and you love them. Llamas seem to be having their time.
Yeah.
I see llamas, toy llamas. Yeah. I see llama clothing. I see their picture on all kinds of products, and not just for children either, like for adults. What's going on?
Why alpacas too.
Alpacas too. Yes.
Alpacas are adorable. Why is like mini llamas? They're so adorable.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I don't think these people have actually ever met a llama. One of my graduate students, Jackie Swatsky, is working with llamas for her PhD. She's actually in film and theater and arts, and so she's not a scientist. And she's really interested in them as another species that we could get to know. They are not an easy species to get to know because they, again, don't have the facial expressions. They use their ears to communicate. So once you know them, you can tell. Oh. Jackie's an expert at it. And they spit when they're unhappy, which is disgusting and yet highly effective. So they're different. And that's why Jackie likes them, is because they are a different species. And it's not as easy to figure them out as it is certainly like an orangutan, where you can just sit and have a chat, A llama is a different kind of animal.
Is there one animal that, absolutely fascinates you, but you just haven't gotten around to studying it at this point? Is there any animal you'd love to study, to do some research on?
This is a tough one because I have worked with so many pandas, elephants, hyenas. I'm starting to think about doing research with crows. I think crows are awesome. And crows are probably the smartest animal other than a chimp, in my opinion. So
really,
yeah, crows are unbelievable. So I think I did my PhD with pigeons, and people think pigeons are rats with wings and idiots, and they couldn't be further from the truth. They're amazing little brains, and they can home and find their way around, and their little tiny brains do all sorts of great things. But crows, crows are a whole different thing. So crows are often, in my field, we often say they're like primates with wings. So
really,
flying monkeys. If you want to go right back to the Wizard of Oz, they're the flying monkeys. So they are pretty extraordinary. And the more we learn about them, the more we realize, oh, there's so much going on with crows. So I find them mysterious and wonderful.
Yeah. Can you tell me one thing like about a crow that is, its intelligence? Because I don't know anything about crows.
They use tools. So, it was thought that only humans use tools, right? And we found out, because thanks to Jane Goodall, we found out, chimpanzees use tools. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, well, crows use tools too. So crows are out there doing things, and we don't even know that they're doing things. We're going to the wilds of Africa to watch chimpanzees use tools, and these crows are using tools in our backyard, which is extraordinary. So they will be able to take a stick and find the right size of stick and modify the stick and get it down and pull, just like if you saw that with a chimpanzee, you'd say, isn't that amazing? That's extraordinary. Yeah, well, crows do that. So, pretty awesome stuff.
They take the stick and they modify it.
Yeah, and then let's say you have a container with some food at the bottom, and you give them a short stick that they can't reach. They'll be like, and they go and get a larger stick, longer stick. They try it again. So when you watch them doing that, you're like, that's interesting. There's something definitely going on in that brain that I didn't expect.
Yeah. I think how long have we known that?
Not very long. There are these this particular species of crows called New Caledonian crows. You can Google that and see that they do some amazing things. One crow named Betty in particular, she was extraordinary. So, there are people who say, crows also have funerals for their dearly departed conspecifics, and I don't know if that's true, but they certainly behave as if they do, and they use deception, and they have all these cognitive capabilities that other species don't have, except for chimps, because chimps have pretty much all of our cognitive capabilities except language, but crows, and they're out there watching us all the time. They're always around. Think about it. Everywhere you go, there's a crow.
Ooh, yeah. Gee, that is really, that's fascinating. I can't get over earlier you were saying, gosh, we know nothing still, right? We haven't figured humans out. We certainly haven't figured animals out. I mean, like in sort of like the vast amount of knowledge that's out there, I feel like it's like, you can't even see the knowledge we know, right? Yeah. As to the knowledge we could know. But just because, you've worked in this field, I would imagine for maybe a few decades, and you say you've worked with all kinds of animals. Does working with animals and studying their behavior give you any insight into human behavior?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a very good question, actually. So I teach a course called Animal Behavior, and I sometimes have 400 or 800 students in that class, and they're all psychology students. And I always say, okay, well, you're here to learn about all the other species, because this will help you when you're looking at humans. Because if you've taken intro psych or any psychology at university, you know that, we all use surveys and we ask people how they feel and all these things. And of course, people lie. That's what we do. We're awesome at it. But their behavior will always tell us what they actually think. So if you're going to look at nonverbal behavior in a human or a gorilla or whatever, the techniques are exactly the same. So I send them all to the zoo, and they all have to do these little studies looking at behavior and analyzing behavior. And they later tell me it really, really helps them when they work with, children on the autism spectrum, or children in daycares, or nonverbal kids, infants, or in geriatric settings, or wherever they are working with people. If you can learn to disregard what people say and just watch their behavior. Their behavior will tell you what's going on. And as you know, people say all the time, when you say, how are you? You say, oh, I'm fine. Okay, well,
Yeah.
sometimes you aren't, but we can tell that through your behavior. So, I think the skills that students learn watching non-human, non-verbal animals, individual, really translate into helping them be better. They're going to be psychologists for sure.
Is there a role for empathy at all in studying animals?
Yes. Oh, on the researcher side, for sure. But we're also studying whether animals have empathy, which is amazing. And it's again hard to define, and we all debate it, and now it's a big thing. But that sort of putting yourself in the shoes of another individual, whatever their species is, that's a pretty interesting thing and a pretty complex thing. But certainly my best students who excel at certainly working with primates have lots of empathy, because you can feel almost what another individual is feeling. And so I think you got to have empathy if you're going to study animal behavior. You can't. I don't think that people 100 years ago would have said that. In fact, I know all the dudes who used to study animal behavior, because it used to be all guys, would say, you have to keep empathy out of it. It's impossible. You cannot name your animals. You cannot do anything that implies that you have a connection to them. But I think most of us have changed our mind, and most of us are women now. So we realize that empathy can actually lead you to some really interesting places, but lead you to thinking about how another species thinks, how another brain works using empathy. So it's a good way to start.
Do you know how much I learned today, Suzanne? I didn't learn this much. I learned a lot. So much more. Yeah, so much more to learn. Just an amazing discussion. Thank you so much, because I know how busy you're on sabbatical, you're in the field, but I really appreciate your taking time to talk to us today.
Pleasure. It's always fun, and you made me think about things in a different way, and I really like that. So appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. That's Suzanne MacDonald. She is a psychologist who studies animal behavior in the Department of Psychology at York University. Now, if you'd like to know more about Suzanne and her research, you can check out our show notes. That is it for the Cram podcast today. We hope you enjoyed learning more about our animal friends. And if you'd like to stay on top of what we talk about on the show, please follow us on social. Our handle is @CramIdeas. Thanks for listening, and see you back here next time.